Hello. In this video, I read out the Japanese folktales in English. I would be happy if you could press the channel subscription and thumbs up now. Let's begin. Once upon a time, there was a strong boy named Kintaro. He was born deep in the mountains of Ashigurayama in Sagami Province and lived with his mother, a mountain nurse. Kintaro was extremely strong from the moment he was born, and by the time he was 7 or 8 years old, he could easily lift things like mortar and rice bran straw. He could wrestle against most adults and still not lose. When he had no more time for anything, Kintaro got bored and ran around the forest all day long. He then carried a big axe that his mother had given him, and cut down really big cedar and pine trees, and had fun pretending to be a lumberjack. One day, he went deep into the forest, and was cutting down a big tree as usual, when a big bear came lumbering out. The bear, eyes wide, said, "Who's destroying my forest?" and jumped on him. Kintaro then said, "What? You're just a bear. Don't you know Kintaro?" and threw out his axe and suddenly bit the bear. He then grabbed the bear by the leg and threw it at him with a thud. The bear bowed down, fell on its back, and became Kintaro's servant. In the forest, when the chief bear bowed down and became Kintaro's servant, rabbits, monkeys, and deer all followed him, saying, "Kintaro, please let me be your servant too." Kintaro nodded, okay, and made them all his servants. After that, every morning Kintaro's mother made him lots of rice balls, and he went out into the forest. Kintaro blew his whistle and called out, "Come on, everyone! Come on, everyone!" And out came a deer, a monkey, and a rabbit, with a bear on its head. Kintaro walked around the mountains with his servants for a day. One day, after walking around, they came to a place where soft grass was growing, and they all stretched out their legs and lay down there. The sun was shining brightly, and they felt good. Kintaro said, "Now, everyone, play sumo. I'll give you this rice ball as a reward." Then the bear dug some rice with his swollen hands and made a wrestling ball. The monkey and the rabbit tried to wrestle first, and the deer ended up as the winner. The rabbit grabbed the monkey's tail and tried to pull it out of the wrestling ball, but the monkey got frustrated and grabbed the rabbit's long ears and pulled so hard that the rabbit got upset and let go of his arm. As a result, the wrestling ball stopped sticking, and neither of them got a reward. This time the rabbit became the winner, and the deer and the bear tried to wrestle, but the deer was flipped over like a hawk by the bear. Kintaro said, it's fun," and clapped his hands. Finally, at the very end, Kintaro ended up in the middle of the wall, and said, "Come on, everyone," and spread his arms wide. Then the rabbit, the monkey, the deer, and the bear, at the very end, tried to attack, but they were all rolled over. "What? They're weak. Everyone, come at me at the same time." When Kintaro said this, the rabbit got frustrated and grabbed his legs. The monkey put his arm around his neck, and there was a big commotion. The deer pushed his hips and the bear clung to his chest, and they all joined together, yelling, trying to defeat Kintaro, but they couldn't defeat him no matter what. Kintaro finally grew impatient, and shook his body once, and the rabbit, monkey, and bear all rolled out of the water at the same time. "Oh, it hurts. Oh, it hurts." They all moaned and rubbed their backs and shoulders. Kintaro then said, "I feel sorry for you for giving in to me, so I'll share some with everyone." He then made the rabbit, monkey, bear, and bear gather around him, and he sat in the middle, and they all shared their rice balls and ate them. After a while Kintaro said, Oh, it was delicious. Come on, let's go home now, and he took everyone back home. Again. On their way back, Michimichi played around in the forest, running and tag on the rocks, and eventually came to the edge of a large valley. The water roared and flowed with great force, but unfortunately, there were no bridges to hold it. Everyone asked, what should we do? Should we go back? Kintaro looked at himself with a happy face. It's fine, he said, and as he looked around, he came across a huge cedar tree, big enough for 2 arms, standing right next to the river. Kintaro threw out his axe and suddenly put his arm over the tree. Then, after pushing it 2 or 3 times, there was a loud thud, and the wood fell in a heap on the river, and a fine pair of chopsticks was made. Kintaro once again shouldered his axe and headed across the river. Everyone looked at each other, and whispered to each other, he must be a tough kid, and followed. At that moment, a woodcutter was hiding on the rock on the other side, watching what was happening. Seeing Kintaro recklessly pushing the big tree, he opened his eyes wide and said to himself, what a strange child. I wonder where he's from. Then he got up and quietly followed Kintaro. After the rabbit and the bear separated, Kintaro went by himself, hopping over valleys and climbing cliffs again, and entered a house in the deep mountain. White spiders were popping up all over the place. The woodcutter followed behind, twisting through trees and holding on to rock corners, and finally followed him. When he finally reached the front of the house, the woodcutter looked inside and saw Kintaro sitting in front of the fireplace, busily telling his mother, the mountain nurse, the story of his wrestling match with the bear and the tiger. His mother listened with a smile, interested. At that moment, the woodcutter suddenly stuck his head out of the window and said, come on, my boy. Next, let's wrestle together. As he went along, he suddenly put out his fuzzy hand in front of Kintaro. The mountain hag said, oh, and looked at Kintaro with a puzzled expression, but Kintaro was amused and said, yes, let's try, and immediately put out his cute, plump arm. The two of them looked at each other with their red faces pressed against each other for a while. Then the woodcutter suddenly said, that's enough. The irises won't stick, and pulled his hand away. Then he sat down again, and bowed politely to the mountain nurse, and said, thank you for coming all of a sudden. The truth is, I saw you just now pushing a big cedar tree near the valley, and I was so surprised that I followed you all the way here. Now you're wrestling again, and I'm amazed at how powerful you are. I'm sure this boy will become a great warrior soon. Then he turned to Kintaro, and said, what do you think, little boy? Why don't you go to the palace and become a samurai? Kintaro rolled his eyes, and said, oh, I hope I can become a samurai. The man who appeared to be this woodcutter was actually Sadamitsu Usui, the most powerful samurai in Japan, and a servant of the noble Minamoto clan. He had been ordered by his master to find a strong samurai, so he traveled around all over Japan in this way. When the mountain nurse heard this, she was very happy and said, in fact, this child's late father was also a samurai named Sakata, who had a fine pedigree. For some reason, he is buried in the mountains, but if there was a good chance, I would like to take him to the capital someday, to become a samurai, and have him take over the family home. If that is the case, though he is a mischievous child, I would be grateful if you could help him. Kintaro listened to their conversation nearby, and said, I'm so happy, so happy. I'm going to be a samurai. And did a little dance. When he heard that Kintaro was going to be taken up to the palace by Sadamitsu the Great, the bear, the monkey, and the rabbit all came to say goodbye. Kintaro stroked everyone's heads in turns, and said, let's all play together happily. They all said, "We're so lonely without you, Kintaro. Please hurry up and become a great warrior, and show us your faces again," and went home with a look of nostalgia. Kintaro put his hands in front of his mother, and said, "Mom, I'm off now." Then he followed Sadamitsu, and left with a smile. After many days, Sadamitsu returned to the palace with Kintaro. He went to Raiko's castle and said, "I found this child deep in Ashigurayama." He showed Kintaro to Raiko. "Wow, he's a rare, strong-looking child," Raiko said, stroking Kintaro's head. "But the name Kintaro is strange for a samurai. If your father is Sakata, you should call yourself Kintoki of Sakata from now on." So Kintaro called himself Kintoki of Sakata, and became Raiko's servant. When he grew up, he became a great samurai and was known as one of the 4 great samurai, along with Watanabe no Suna, Urabe no Sutake, and Usui no Sadamitsu. That's that.